Hi friends, we are about to see a CBC interview of Mr. Ronan Oger. He has renamed himself Morgan Oger. This is a CBC interview, and as you can tell, it's clearly biased, and they are very supportive of this attack on religious freedom. They don't really talk about the issues. The issue being, does the electorate have the right to question someone's so-called transgender identity? And in Mr. Oger's case, copious and very militant activism. We certainly have a right to be concerned about that. He's on record as wanting to take children from homes of parents who don't support transgender ideology being forced on their kids. He certainly wants to change the laws, and he has succeeded, that allow us to freely discuss issues such as so-called transgender identity. He really wants to take away the right to speak what is true. While this interview goes on, I am going to have a picture of his face because it's an audio interview. And as you look at that face, you can see, indeed, it is a man's face. It is not a woman's face. So here is the interview now, folks. Enjoy, although for me it is hard to do so.
Now, during the 2017 provincial election campaign, Morgan Oger was running as an NDP candidate in Vancouver-False Creek. Any political candidate will tell you that campaigns take a whole lot of effort and focus, and they will leave you feeling exhausted at the end. But what Morgan encountered during her campaign was even more difficult than that. She became the target of transphobic flyers from an anti-LGBTQ activist named Bill Whatcott. The flyers referred to her by her male birth name, made multiple untrue assertions, and quoted the Bible. While Oger would narrowly lose that election, today she has won at the BC Human Rights Tribunal. The tribunal ruled earlier today that the leaflets amounted to hate speech. So for her reaction, we have reached Morgan Oger. Hello to you.
Hi, Gloria.
How are you feeling about this ruling?
I think I'm starting to get used to the fact that this is over. I knew it was coming yesterday. We get prior notice that it's coming, and the ruling dropped this morning early. I was in a coffee shop, and then it took all of my strength to read it, even though I knew that I had already won. That wasn't the title. We won from my lawyer, and it was 105 pages of awfulness. But now, a few hours later, I'm finally getting used to the idea that it's over and that we succeeded, and that finally in British Columbia today, we have a ruling that clearly says that there are limits to charter rights of free expression and religion, and that you can't blame your religion for being a bigot, basically. And I think this is a really good thing. It's very important.
Well, take us back to 2017, Morgan. What was it like at that time to be targeted by these flyers?
Well, as you know, there's not a lot of transgender people in the world. About 0.5% of the population is transgender, and nobody gets elected by talking about their issues that only affect 0.5% of the electorate. So in the entire election, I was doing everything I could to talk about anything except being transgender. And then these flyers showed up, and these flyers put front and center the association of disease, of illness, of lying, my name, and basically called me an abomination and vilified me. And it was a horrifying experience. The thing that I was most afraid of was a flyer like that coming up, and here it was, showing up on doors, in people's mailboxes, being like I was getting calls from store owners asking if I knew where this came from. And then we had this huge distraction to deal with all of this. So not only was it like horrifying and humiliating at a personal level, but it was also a total distraction for 3 or 4 days with lawyers and strategy. And it was a real problem for my campaign, to keep us on track, to keep on talking about the things we were trying to talk about, which were, of course, the party platform.
Well, that was the election campaign of 2017. What kind of an effort has it taken to see this process through to the point of receiving this ruling from the Human Rights Tribunal?
This has been a monumental process. I think it's hard to, in a normal human rights complaint, you complain to the body in writing, and then the other side gets to talk back, and maybe you meet in a meeting, and then ultimately, finally, there's a ruling. But this has been 2 years of fighting over details, misspeaking and ruling, and the other side constantly sniping at me, not only through the tribunal, but in social media and in videos as well. So it was very, very difficult, and it was actually an awful experience. This has really opened my eyes to how difficult it can be to put in a complaint to what's supposed to be an administrative body. It was essentially a full-on court case.
Wow, you covered a little bit of this in the opening of our conversation. But what do you think a ruling like this means for other trans people in this province?
Well, this ruling is important for everybody who the explicit list of prohibitions from discrimination covers, which is just about everybody anyhow. Plus, it's very important for transgender people. This is the first ruling ever that says, since Bill C-16 came in and the provincial equivalent, that says that writing and publishing material that incites discrimination and advertises an intention to discriminate against someone on the basis of their gender identity or their being transgender is a violation of our hate speech laws. This is a very, very big ruling because basically, for the first time ever, it's a confirmation that telling someone, like, for example, telling me that I am not a woman because I'm transgender, that is now clearly not allowed in a publication. Now, of course, people are allowed to say what they want, but if they're publishing something, it's a different standard. More importantly, it puts into jurisprudence another case in which the defense of this is my religion or this is what I believe, like freedom of expression or freedom of religion, it's another case where this defense has limits, where you can't just say or do whatever you want on the basis of your charter rights, because these are rights that are in the Charter of Canada. Instead, you have limits. If you cross a line and you go into what the courts consider publishing hatred, you've gone too far, and it's a violation of our human rights law. This is very important. For example, for people who say that Islam is not a religion, or that put out anti-Semitic statements and so forth. This is precedent that works for all of us.
Now, we have been unable to reach Bill Whatcott for his reaction to this ruling. What do you think the chances are that he will appeal?
I think the chances are high that he appeals. I hope he doesn't. But then again, if Mr. Whatcott sees to it that this becomes a Supreme Court ruling from the Supreme Court of Canada, I think that's a gift because that's the highest level of confirmation. I believe that the ruling is very strong and very clear, and it was very carefully done. As you can see, there was a three-member panel, not just one member. It would be a very good thing to have this ruling affirmed by the Supreme Court of Canada. Also, it would take probably a decade, which I don't look forward to, knowing that it could take that long to finally get a final ruling on this.
Well, it's obviously an important day for you, Morgan. Thank you so much for taking time to share your thoughts with us.
Thank you very much, Gloria.
That's Morgan Oger, a political activist here in Vancouver, and she was also the vice president, or is also the vice president of the BC NDP.